What if you could support one of the body's most powerful anti-aging processes without fasting? Number 24-hour fasts. No extreme diets. No complicated protocols. No suffering through constant hunger. Just a few simple changes to the foods you already eat. Now before we go any further, let's be clear. Nothing can magically switch on autophagy overnight. No food possesses superpowers. No ingredient can reverse aging. But scientists have discovered something fascinating. Certain foods appear capable of influencing the same nutrient-sensing pathways that help regulate cellular repair. And some of the most powerful changes don't involve adding exotic ingredients. They involve replacing ordinary foods with slightly better ones. Tiny changes. Massive biological consequences. Today, we're going to explore 5 simple food swaps that may help create a metabolic environment more supportive of cellular maintenance, healthier aging, and the body's natural repair systems. But first, let's start with a question. Imagine owning a luxury car worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every day, dirt accumulates inside the engine. Dust builds up in the filters. Old oil circulates through the machinery. Damaged parts begin appearing. Would you continue driving forever without maintenance? Of course not. Because eventually performance declines. Efficiency drops. Breakdowns become inevitable. Now imagine something even more valuable. Your body. Inside your cells, damage accumulates every single day. Proteins become worn out. Cellular structures break down. Waste products appear. Oxidative stress leaves its mark. The body needs a way to remove that damage. A way to recycle old components. A way to clean house. That process is called autophagy. Scientists often describe autophagy as the body's internal recycling program. Damaged cellular parts are identified. Broken components are removed. Useful materials are recycled. The cell becomes cleaner, more efficient, more resilient. For decades, researchers have linked autophagy to healthy aging, metabolic health, and cellular maintenance. And one of the most famous triggers is fasting. Why? Because fasting sends an important biological message. Resources are limited. Maintenance becomes a priority. Cells shift attention away from growth and toward repair. But fasting isn't for everyone. Some people struggle with it. Others find it unsustainable. And many simply want a more practical approach. That's where food quality begins to matter. Because the body doesn't only respond to calories. It responds to information. Every meal sends instructions. Every bite communicates signals. Every food influences biological pathways. Think of food as software updates for your cells. Different foods provide different instructions. Some encourage growth. Some encourage storage. Some encourage repair. And understanding those signals is the key to today's story. Let's begin with food swap number 1. Swap refined breakfast cereals for eggs and vegetables. At first glance, this sounds unrelated to autophagy. But stay with me. Imagine starting every morning by dumping gasoline onto a fire. The flames immediately surge, then crash, then surge again. This is similar to what happens when highly processed carbohydrates cause rapid spikes in blood sugar. The body responds with insulin. Energy rises, then falls. Hunger often returns quickly. Now imagine a different breakfast. Protein, healthy fats, fiber-rich vegetables. The energy release becomes steadier. Blood sugar becomes more stable. The metabolic environment changes. Researchers have long observed that stable metabolic conditions support healthier nutrient signaling throughout the body. And those signals influence pathways connected to maintenance and repair. The goal isn't eliminating carbohydrates. The goal is reducing unnecessary spikes and crashes. Small change. Major biological impact. Now let's move to food swap number 2. Replace sugary snacks with nuts. Imagine feeding a city entirely with fireworks. Lots of excitement. Lots of activity. But very little lasting value. That's essentially how the body experiences many ultra-processed snacks. Rapid energy. Minimal satiety. Frequent cravings. The cycle repeats. Nuts create a completely different experience. They provide healthy fats, fiber, minerals, plant compounds, and importantly, they digest more slowly. Think of them as slow-burning fuel. The metabolic response becomes calmer, more controlled, more sustainable. Researchers increasingly believe that these stable metabolic patterns may support healthier aging over time. Because every metabolic spike creates work. Every crash creates stress. Reducing those fluctuations may help create an environment where cellular maintenance can operate more efficiently. Now let's discuss something fascinating. Most people assume aging is simply about getting older. But many scientists view aging differently. They see aging as the gradual accumulation of damage. Imagine leaving a house unattended for decades. Small problems become larger problems. Minor damage becomes major damage. Maintenance gets delayed. The structure slowly deteriorates. The same principle applies to biology. Autophagy helps slow that accumulation. Not eliminate it, not reverse it, but manage it. And managing damage is one of the most important goals in longevity science. Which brings us to food swap number 3. Replace highly processed vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil. This simple change has attracted enormous scientific interest. Imagine 2 construction crews. One performs careful repairs. The other constantly creates additional damage. Which city ages better? The answer is obvious. Researchers continue investigating how different dietary fats influence inflammation, oxidative stress, and cellular function. Extra virgin olive oil contains compounds that have been studied extensively for their potential role in supporting healthy aging. It's one reason Mediterranean populations consistently appear in longevity research. Not because olive oil is magic, but because dietary patterns matter. Repeated choices matter. Small habits matter. And the biological effects accumulate over decades. Now let's talk about food swap number 4. One of the most powerful swaps in this entire video. Replace processed meats with legumes. This is where things become incredibly interesting. Imagine your cells constantly monitoring incoming nutrients. Every meal delivers information. The cells ask important questions. Should we prioritize growth? Should we prioritize storage? Should we prioritize maintenance? One nutrient that attracts enormous scientific attention is methionine, an amino acid found in varying amounts across foods. Researchers discovered that methionine availability influences nutrient-sensing pathways associated with growth and repair. And legumes naturally provide a different nutrient profile compared to many processed meats. This doesn't mean meat is bad. It doesn't mean everyone should become vegetarian. The science is more nuanced than that. What researchers are exploring is how dietary patterns influence long-term biological signaling. And legumes continue appearing in studies of healthy aging populations around the world. Beans, lentils, chickpeas, simple foods, yet biologically fascinating, because they provide protein, fiber, minerals, and signals that may support healthier nutrient sensing. Now here's where things become even more surprising, because the 5th and most powerful food swap may be hiding inside your favorite beverage. Now let's reveal food swap number 5. The swap that surprises almost everyone. Replace sugary coffee drinks with black coffee or minimally sweetened coffee. At first glance, this sounds almost too simple. How could changing a morning beverage influence something as complex as cellular repair? To answer that question, imagine a city receiving instructions every hour. Build more. Store more. Grow faster. Consume more resources. Now imagine those instructions never stop. Eventually, maintenance gets delayed. Repairs get postponed. Cleanup becomes less of a priority. This is similar to what happens when nutrient abundance remains constant. The body receives continuous growth signals. And while growth is essential, so is maintenance. Researchers became interested in coffee because it appears to interact with several biological pathways connected to metabolism and cellular stress responses. Coffee is one of the most studied beverages in the world. Thousands of scientific papers have examined its effects. And while researchers continue debating specific mechanisms, many findings suggest coffee contains compounds that may support healthy aging when consumed appropriately. The problem isn't usually the coffee. It's everything added to it.
Imagine transforming a relatively simple beverage into a liquid dessert. Sugar, syrups, whipped toppings, sweetened creamers. The metabolic picture changes completely. A small adjustment may create a very different biological response. And that's the theme running through all 5 food swaps. Not deprivation. Not suffering. Not extreme restriction. Substitution. Replacing one signal with a better signal. One choice with a better choice. One habit with a healthier habit. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Because most people misunderstand autophagy. They imagine a magical switch. Turn it on. Turn it off. Simple. Reality is much more interesting. Autophagy behaves more like a dimmer switch. Many factors influence it. Sleep, exercise, nutrient status, energy balance, stress, diet quality. Everything contributes. Imagine an orchestra. No single instrument creates the entire symphony. The performance emerges from cooperation. The same principle applies to biology. No single food creates healthy aging. No single ingredient controls cellular repair. The outcome emerges from countless interactions working together. And that realization changed longevity research. Because scientists began focusing less on miracle solutions and more on patterns. Dietary patterns. Lifestyle patterns. Behavioral patterns. The question shifted. Instead of asking, what single thing activates autophagy? Researchers started asking, what environments help the body maintain itself most effectively? That question produced fascinating answers. Again and again, healthy aging populations displayed similar characteristics. Whole foods, fiber-rich diets, stable blood sugar patterns, regular movement, adequate sleep, lower levels of ultra-processed foods. No magic, just biology working as intended. Now imagine 2 factories. The first receives high-quality materials. Equipment is maintained. Workers are organized. Repairs happen immediately. The second receives poor materials. Maintenance gets delayed. Problems accumulate. Waste builds up. Which factory performs better after 20 years? The answer is obvious. Yet the same principle applies to human health. Every day, your cells must decide how to allocate resources. Growth, storage, repair, defense. The quality of incoming information influences those decisions. And food represents one of the most powerful sources of information the body receives. This is why nutrient-sensing pathways fascinate researchers. Because they act like biological decision-makers. Monitoring conditions. Adjusting priorities. Coordinating responses. One of the most studied pathways is mTOR. Think of mTOR as a construction manager. When resources are abundant, construction accelerates. Growth increases. Building projects expand. This is necessary. Without growth signals, muscle maintenance becomes impossible. Recovery becomes impossible. Life itself becomes impossible. But construction cannot be the only priority. Imagine a city that only builds new structures. No cleaning. No maintenance. No repairs. Sooner or later, problems emerge. This is where autophagy enters the story. Autophagy acts like the maintenance department, removing damaged components, recycling useful materials, keeping systems efficient. The healthiest biological environment appears to balance both processes: growth and repair, construction and maintenance, expansion and cleanup. And many of the food swaps we've discussed today help support that balance. Not because they force autophagy, but because they reduce some of the metabolic chaos that interferes with healthy regulation. Now let's discuss something most people overlook: the role of consistency. Imagine brushing your teeth once for 8 hours, then never brushing again for a month. Would that work? Of course not. The benefit comes from repetition, daily action, consistent maintenance. The same principle applies to cellular health. One healthy meal changes very little. One unhealthy meal changes very little. The real impact comes from patterns repeated over years. Tiny decisions.
repeated thousands of times. This is why simple food swaps matter. They're sustainable. Most people can replace breakfast cereal. Most people can swap sugary snacks for nuts. Most people can use olive oil more often. Most people can eat more legumes. Most people can reduce added sugar in coffee. Small adjustments. Massive cumulative effects. And that's exactly how biology works. Not through dramatic transformations, but through accumulated signals. Signals repeated day after day, month after month, year after year. Now imagine reaching age 70. Your cells have been listening to those signals for decades. Every meal, every snack, every habit, every choice. The body remembers. The body adapts. The body responds. And that response becomes your biology. This is why the concept of food as information is so powerful. Because it changes how we think. Instead of asking, how many calories does this contain? We begin asking, what message is this sending? What instruction is reaching my cells? What environment am I creating? And suddenly nutrition becomes far more interesting, far more meaningful, far more connected to longevity. Because longevity is not about avoiding aging. Everyone ages. The question is how well the body functions during that journey, how effectively it repairs itself, how efficiently it manages damage, how resilient it remains over time. And that's where autophagy becomes so important. Not because it's trendy, not because it's popular, but because it represents one of the body's most fundamental maintenance systems. A system that has protected life for millions of years. A system designed to recycle, renew, repair, and adapt. So if there is one lesson from today's video, it's this. You don't always need extreme interventions to support healthier biology. Sometimes the most powerful strategy is surprisingly simple. Replace, upgrade, improve. One food at a time. One habit at a time. One signal at a time. Because small changes repeated consistently often accomplish what dramatic changes never can. And your cells are listening to every single one of them.